So starting like in 2014, I try to see some other doctors, and I actually get some good information, including right. So a lot of the information I found I got early on in 2014. And then I also made contact with, when I was talking about that MRI facility, and there's this person there, Patrick Jackson, who defrauded some doctors and veterinarians. I actually contacted one of those doctors and one of those veterinarians, and they actually sent me back very supportive statements. Now, even at that point, I wasn't alleging any kind of sex assault. I was saying I was made unconscious, and they all kind of agreed that I had, like legal, medical, so kind of problems. And that veterinarian actually even said that if those people were in his profession, they would not be licensed anymore. So I got very positive statements from a veterinarian and a physician, which is good. I mean, because, when you have this kind of issues, you need someone kind of in the field. And the veterinarian is not so much out of the field, because a lot of medical research is actually done by veterinarians, and especially for heart problems, usually they do a lot of testing on dogs. So dogs, mice, cats, whatever. So yeah, it's perfectly compatible. In fact, the condition heart failure, a lot of dogs have heart failure, and I think the dog's heart failure is kind of similar to mine, because with heart failure usually it's like you're really old, or like you are really unhealthy, like you have a bunch of heart attacks, or you smoke a lot and stuff, and you get heart failure. But in my case, I'm probably like the dogs. I went from really good health to really bad health all of a sudden. So I think the vet kind of understands the stuff well. So, and they had no reason to write back any supportive comments to me. And then another interesting thing which supports my points is that Innova practice, it actually had 7 neurologists. Now, Dr. Cochran is the guy at the top. Dr. Eberly is his right-hand man, and there's like 5 other basically neurologists who work there, and one of them is Dr. Kulkarni, and that just leaves 4 neurologists. And obviously he's had these other neurologists also in the conspiracy, working to conceal my information, trying to figure out how to conceal the facts. But incredibly, what happened is, of the 4 neurologists which were there, 3 out of 4 resigned in unison, and that never happens anywhere else. Now, I never spoke to them. They didn't come and tell me that they resigned because of this problem. But obviously, my problem came in 2013. At the end of 2013, these 3 neurologists resign in unison, and that never happens. And they're also medical school instructors at the VCU Medical School, which is at the Innova campus. And this would be right in the middle of medical school, so of the year, right, of the medical school year. And there's no way the instructors would just abandon their students. Usually they kind of stick around, right? So that made no sense. Well, actually, it made perfect sense. I mean, obviously, you're never going to find that anywhere else, where 3 out of 4 doctors would resign in unison. And so it is about me, but I don't think it's so much that they were trying to help me as far as they were trying to save their own skin, because obviously this Dr. Cochran is getting these other doctors to conspire and to make up a plan to conceal aggravated sex assault. And on top of that, now, because that led to this false diagnosis and me being prescribed this medication, which is ultimately going to kill me. So ultimately what you have is you have a sex assault, and the victim is going to ultimately die from the sex assault. So, that's not even, no longer just first degree sex assault. It's very possible after the person dies, which is me, if the prosecutor were doing a good job, it could be upgraded to like a first degree murder, because you really ended up killing someone just so you can commit a sex assault. And all those who are connected, aiding and abetting, they're pretty much equal to have committed the original crime. So it's not as though because you haven't committed the original sex assault, you just get to skate. And no, I mean, you're concealing, you're keeping the wrongdoer from receiving their punishment. You're keeping a sex offender working at a MRI facility when he should be in jail. And you're also keeping me from actually getting my medical care because you're concealing my health information. So anyway, so I guess once it became 2014, I'm pretty much out of the Dr. Kulkarni's place. And obviously, now, although I get some information from the doctors who I start seeing in 2014, they're also concealing a lot. And I also found out, I have good evidence that, in fact, Innova itself confirmed it, that the doctors also have been in some degree in cahoots with Innova, and they have been hiding some of the information. So, they confirmed, because I have an active case against Innova, so I do get some information about them. And so they've been working hard to keep me. So even after I'm in 2014, I'm getting sicker and sicker. The Innova, they have all this money. They basically get the Fairfax County government basically gives them special favors and just hands them out money, and also they get all kinds of healthcare payments, and they use that for whatever they choose to do. They're like a non-profit, so which means they just have a whole bunch of cash sitting around, and they can do what that's the interesting thing about non-profits. At least if they were for-profit, that money would be money coming out of their own pockets. But in this case, since it's a non-profit, they just have a whole bunch of extra cash sitting around, which no one can really put in their in their own pocket. So I guess they can just use that cash to conceal sex assault and first degree assault and this and that. So anyway, obviously, since I can't pay the doctors that much and stuff, and so I get into the Maryland State Medicaid program, right? So that's the government medical assistance. And at this point, even though that kind of health care is not as good as the other health care I can get, I'm in the government system. At least I should have the safety and security of all the government rules and laws helping me. And really what it is with medical care, there's all kinds of rules and laws from the American Medical Association Code of Ethics. But then you have this medical board in Maryland and Virginia and stuff, and they're all kind of in the pockets of these doctors, basically, right? Because if you're on the medical board, you're only there for a short assignment. Then you have to go back and get a job from Innova. So obviously you're not going to be finding any wrongdoing on their part. So actually, by me being on the government system, I actually get all kinds of extra protections, because a lot of what is in the AMA Code of Ethics is actually codified for Medicaid patients as law. So if the doctors were going to be continuing with that same nonsense of concealing my medical information, then that's actually unlawful. And if I get hurt because of it, it's actually a color of law violation, just like you have with the police brutality cases. What they're saying is the police officer is a government official, and they are depriving whoever they harm of their rights. And in the same way, with this Medicaid system, the people who run it and the doctors who participate, they're all contractors, and they agree to follow all the government rules. And so, things should be looking good for me. But incredibly, these government contract, this group that I went, this group running the Medicaid in Maryland, what they do is, they have like the real bottom of the barrel doctors. And these doctors, as soon as I went to them, they see dollar signs and they contact the wrongdoers, and they immediately jump into a conspiracy with them to conceal my stuff. So now obviously I have a slow moving lawsuit against them, and it's slowly I'm gonna be seeing some justice, right? So it's because I guess that's kind of the thing with when I got into the government paid healthcare. I basically got some sorry ass doctors, but I had the backing of the government law to help me. And so since they're sorry ass doctors, they decided to basically sell me for money. And so it looks like I'm going to be able to use these laws against these doctors, unlike I would not be able to use these laws against a doctor who was outside of the system. I can only use these laws because they're government contractors and they're violating all these laws. So they do things like, I went to a cardiologist, and what the cardiologist did is there's a test, the treadmill stress test. Well, along with Dr. Cochran, obviously these people, so obviously they don't have to do any testing to know what the problems are. They know exactly what the problem is, because so when I went for this treadmill stress test, what that cardiologist did is he indicated on the machine that I was taking a beta blocker, and I was not taking a beta blocker. And even on his own medical records, it doesn't show anywhere that I'm taking a beta blocker. And he indicated this is because he knew beforehand that when I get on the treadmill stress test, my heart rate would not come up normally, so it would stay down. And because he knew this, and what happens is if you take a beta blocker, your heart rate stays down. So what the machine does is if you type in the patient is on a beta blocker, instead of saying, say, a target rate of 200, it will say a target rate of like 160. So, and then another thing what happened is during the test, the cardiologist, he tried to stop the test at a time when I said keep going, and I actually kept going. And incredibly, just at that time, all kinds of problems showed up on the test. So you have this EKG tracings. They were normal until that point, and he tried to get me off, and I stayed on, and just within like few seconds, all kinds of problems showed up.